Hey, 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 hey. We're the Mars Volta.
We are?
Yeah.
It appears to me, quoting alarms, guillotine smirks, in your house I smother.
I'm Anthony, and I'll be a host here in the Downfall Network, so nice to meet you as well. You know what, let's be a really shitty, failed abortion crossbred of the Rageaholic in Cover Killer Nation. Now, if you couldn't tell already from the title or read, today we're going to talk about the Mars Volta, my personal favorite modern prog rock band. The Mars Volta are a very, very interesting and unique rock band, and throughout their 11-year stint, they went through many lineup changes, but remained the love child of Cedric Bixler Zavala and Omar Rodriguez Lopez. Boy, that's a fucking mouthful. Two gentlemen hailing from El Paso, Texas. Now, those names might be familiar to you, and let's say if you knew at the drive-in, yep, you'd be correct. They fill the exact same roles as they do in the Mars Volta as in that band, guitars and vocals. Now, this video won't be a lineage on their entire career. God help me with the amount of solo records Omar released. Jesus. But there's a few places I need to stop throughout the journey just to let you understand the Mars Volta a bit better, if that makes any sense, so just bear with me, please. Thanks. The first record I want to touch on quickly is Relationship of Command by At the Drive-In. This record is one of the best things I actually ever done, honestly. It tops a few Volta projects, honestly, in my opinion, and it's just a shining example of post-hardcore at its finest. I'm not going to go into a full in-depth review on it, but it's just, I would say give it a listen regardless. Now, this was the last record for the band at the time. This piece of shit doesn't fucking exist. No. The band's lineup at this time consisted of Cedric, Omar, Jim Ward, Paul Hinos, and Tony Hajar. Also, Iggy Pop played on this record. Now, you might ask what does that have to do with this video? It doesn't. I guess no information's useless. Some's more relevant than others. Yet again, you're watching this video. Back on track, the band split in early 2001. Now, this split was due to many factors, but most importantly, or at least the one I think that's more prevalent, is due to creative differences. Now, Cedric and Omar wanted to go for a more psychedelic, experimental, off-the-wall sound, and the rest of them wanted to, well, standard alt-rock, more, I guess, yeah, more standard music. So, they split up. Cedric and Omar went to go form the Mars Volta, and the other three went to go Spartan. We can see who got the shit end of the stick. Now wait, I'm not quite onto Volta yet, I'm sorry, but there's just a bit more I wanted to talk about first. We'll get there soon, don't worry. De Facto, a quick project I want to touch on. Now, De Facto is a dub band. What is dub, might you ask? That's the same question I actually asked while researching this. Dub is a genre that's pretty much reggae mixed with electronic and experimental music, so I guess progressive reggae. Progressive reggae, yeah. I think that explanation will suffice for now. The band ran from 1998 to 2003 along with At the Drive-In, so they were kind of doing that as a side project. The band consisted of Omar playing bass, Cedric on drums, Isaiah Ike Owens, a keyboardist from Long Beach, California, and Jeremy Michael Ward, a synth player and a sound manipulator. Now I could argue this is the closest they got to Volta before Volta itself, and yeah, they make really cool, enjoyable music, nothing too amazing. Okay, now we're finally here, the Mars Volta. The members of De Facto added on a bass player by the name of Eva Gardner and a drummer by the name of Blake Fleming. John Theodore soon seeped his way into the drum throne, and this lineup would record the Tremulant EP. Now, I'm not going to go too into the Tremulant EP, but it's very, very enjoyable, and it's obviously the roots for the rest of their projects, especially their next record. Of course, this has one song that was a concert staple. Performance-wise, everyone was on fleek, and it's a very enjoyable record. Around this time, Eva Gardner had to leave the band due to her father dying, so someone had to fill the role of bassist. Who, may you ask? Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Now, I may rustle some jimmies, but I really don't like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I mean, I respect Flea, I respect Will Ferrell, I respect John Frusciante a lot, but their music just does nothing for me. Now, the story, the concept behind this is actually based off a friend Cedric had in El Paso. named Julio Venegas, who tragically committed suicide in '98 by jumping off a freeway. Now, I'm not even going to begin to try to decipher these lyrics. They're cryptic and just off the wall. Just fucked, man. Just fucked. But from what I've read, it's about a man named Kurt Tax who overdoses on morphine and rat poison. That sounds oddly specific. To a coma, not eclectic. That might be next. And now he meets these weird-ass creatures in this odd land and shit happens. You know, I'm sorry, I'm sure you can find better interpretations elsewhere. I'll leave a couple links down below. Now, I'll return back to the story in a minute. I remember the first time listening to Volta. Son et lumière, or Sounds and Lights in English. The song bamboozled me. It really did. When Intergalactic ESP hit, I felt like I got hit by a car. The instrumentation is tight yet chaotic. I know it's an oxymoron, but just bear with me. They take different directions on every song in this record, and yet still manage to make it sound alike. Now what I think helps this is the entire record's in the key of B minor. Now if I'm wrong, please correct me. Now many influences are shown here, of course. Psychedelic, prog, jazz, and Latin. They also go for a lot of sound effects on this record, being from Jeremy Michael Ward, who creates just amazing soundscapes across the board. The closest the band gets to ambient on this record is Cicatrice ESP. A good portion of this track is filled with mellow jams from the band and a nice soundscape. John Frusciante also plays on this record, being a longtime member of Volta as well. Now, I remember actually not liking Volta at first, surprise, surprise. I was like, what the fuck was I listening to? Now, one track that actually really gripped me on my first listens is Televators. Now, the band just cranks the energy down and just creates a dreary and emotional track. It's a really gorgeous tune, honestly. The track entails Kurt Tax committing suicide to get to his dream world. And the next song, Take the Veil, Kurt Tax, wow. They just crank shit up to 11. This amazing track. Now lyrically it entails Kurt Tax. He's back in his dream world, dreamland, whatever the hell you want to call it. And it's all hellish there, and he's basically pleading, who brought me here to sick and deprived. Sonically the song just kicks ass. Everyone's on fleek. Cedric sings in a post-hardcore style for this in the verses. The song even goes to this nice little jazz section, which I appreciate as a jazz nerd. This is how you close an album. Did I mention the jazz section made me moist? To close, this album's just a godsend. I love every minute of it, and I'm glad I stuck through it, I really am. Now, tragically and unfortunately, Jeremy Michael Ward died of a heroin overdose a month before the record came out. The only good thing to come out of that is the band stopped doing drugs. Remember, kids, don't do drugs. Drugs are for thugs. Do hugs. Now, I remember when I got this record, I didn't think it would get better than this. I was wrong. Really wrong. I love this record. It's a top 10 for me for sure. Now that's out of the way, let's get into this. After recording the last album, Flea dipped, so the band needed someone to fill the role of a bass player. To fill this role, they got Juan Elderlit, most notably of Racer X, to fill it. It's pretty interesting. Juan didn't think he got the role until the second day, and Omar told him, you got it. And ever since he's been held captive, played with the band ever since, yeah, let's leave it at that. Adrian Terez Gonzalez was also added to the ensemble to play wind instruments with them. Omar also added his brother Marcel to play some percussion for them. The recording process for this, Omar brought in each musician to the back of his recording studio, and Omar gave them their part to nail, and then after they nailed it, to add their own inflections onto it, and he kept on doing that for each individual musician. Some members like this approach, some members despise this approach. But, I mean, this was the product, so I guess Omar was doing something right. This record has so much going for it. They added more ambience akin to Sistrasic ESP on the first record. It's making amazing and atmospheric soundscapes that actually led to a track being cut off the record. Now I just want to give a quick mention to the track, Francis the Mute itself. It's actually cut off the record, so some people may not have heard it. The beginning of the song actually has 4.5 minutes of ambience, which is created by this old telephone bell, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong. Then after it goes into this, dare I say, epic 3/4 section, which is just wow. I always get chills down my back when I hear the line, I'll never let them hurt you, I'll never let them in, what you took from me is mine, and what is mine I'll never give. Something about it is just so cool to me. Now, I remember the first time actually listening to this record, I was playing Dark Souls 2, the only good fucking thing about that game, and I was just floored about how great it was. Now, on to the story. I'm not going to go into full detail about the story, but apparently it's about a male prostitute by the name of Vismund Cygnus, whose mother was murdered by priests, so he has to go find his relatives and get information about the murders to exact his revenge.
What? What the fuck?
Yeah, what the fuck? Now, Omar apparently said the story is up for interpretation. Nice cop-out answer, Omar. Now, how does one come up with all this shit? Now, apparently, the story is based off a diary Jeremy Michael Ward found while working as a repo man. I don't know about you, I just think that's so cool how this timeline, I guess, fell in place. Not the circumstances, though. It's kind of sad. Now, I could not talk about the last track, Cassandra Gemini. It was just a Goliath, see what I did there, behemoth opus of a track. It's chaotic, frantic, epic, and lengthy, and a track I'm legitimately thankful for. Now, the only piece of criticism I could see and get is this album's noise, or just noisy, or whatever. People are mainly bitching about the ambience on this track, and your opinion is wrong. Now, before I write a full thesis on this hard-rocking, Latin, jazzy, prog, epic masterpiece, I'm going to stop myself right here, but wow. Just wow. Just wow, bravo, and I'm actually thankful for this record existing. I'm going to do a quick touch-up on this live record called Scabdates. These live performances are basically just long-ass jam sessions built off themes off the band's repertoire, so I would say give it a listen. It's kind of abrasive, but you're listening to Mars Volta, so what else are you expecting? Now, the next 4 records are quite interesting. Yeah, sure, none of them beat the first 2 records, like, they're masterpieces, but they're all interesting in their own right. Now, the general consensus is they get worse as they go on, and like the sheep I am, I sort of agree. But if you ask a lot of different Volta fans, some are going to say, this record's shite, or this is just noise, etc. You get the gist. Let's move on. Now, after Francis, Paul Hino saw Volta, and he's like, hey guys, that looks really fun. Could I join? And yeah, he pretty much hop-shipped and joined Volta, becoming their sound manipulator. Now, don't shoot the messenger, but the band themselves refer to this record as their autistic child. I don't agree. I actually really enjoy this record. Similar to Francis, there's no really short songs, shortest song being 4 minutes. And you could argue this is almost as dense as Francis. Very packed record with a lot to dig into. Now, the record both opens and closes with pieces that are around 7 minutes in length, and they're spacey and ambient, yet haunting and boisterous at the same time. Also, let me just step back a minute. There's no underlying theme to this record, so that's maybe a reason some people don't like it. Just throwing that out there. The track Tetragrammation is really cool. I heard a theory out there it's actually composed backwards, which, if so, that just cements Omar being a genius writer.
So Omar, has it been all downhill since your band, your previous band at the drive-in, opened for my band, the Evaporators?
It's all been downhill. It's been horrible, you know. We've been slumming it on the streets, you know, and just sucking dick for coke, you know.
Now, a lot of the lyrics on the song point to the song being about an exorcism. It has one of my favorite lines ever. The kiosk in my temporal lobe, shaped like Rosalind Carter. This line makes no sense, but I actually wouldn't have it any other way. This song also reminds me of Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Tarkus. They're both, I guess, looped songs in a way. Viscerize is a deep cut of the track, and it's one I really wanted to talk about. Now, I didn't really get this song, really kind of ignored it until more recently, but it gets this really pop-ish, dare I say, breakdown. It's just really cool. The title of this track comes from a term coined by Jeremy Michael Ward. It's a mixture of the words amputate, technology, and architecture. More useless information. Overall, I really like this decisive record. Now, while touring for the past record, Cedric and Omar booted John Theodore. They really should have checked themselves, shouldn't they? They said he was being a bummer and unhappy, and Cedric even said that was the stupidest mistake they ever made.
But then you guys fire him.
Yeah, which is the stupidest move we ever made.
Yeah.
Now they're fiddling around with drummers. They picked up one called Tony Parks. He'll be mentioned later. But they decided on a drummer named Thomas Pridgeon. He's a quite interesting and controversial drummer for the band. Now, I'm going to compare him to Ash's Charizard from the original Pokemon series. Yes, I know, I'm going to die alone. He's quite loose and untamable and has that fuck you attitude, but when he works and actually tries to, I guess, cohese with the band, he's really good job, really kick-ass. Now, the recording process behind this record is just one big shit sandwich. While in Jerusalem, Omar bought a Ouija board. Never a good idea. Never. Ever. The band decided to play with the Ouija board as a ritual after shows on the Amputechture tour, and that's when shit started to get spooky.
Yeah, my studio flooded twice. Our engineer had a mental breakdown. We went through 3 different HD rigs, Pro Tools rigs, 2 different laptops. All sorts of weird things happened.
After that, enough of spooky shit going on, Omar snapped the board and then hid in a location, not revealing it to anyone. Now this is a concept record with lyrics derived from the Ouija board. It tells the tale about a love triangle in a Muslim society along with an honor killing. Don't look at me, I didn't write this. Now sonically this record's jarring, abrasive, and just really aggressive. Thomas Pridgen really helps hammer it home with his drumming style. It's really... Yeah, he doesn't know how to turn it down. That's a fair criticism of him, but when it's needed, it just works. Now, in some parts, it's not as cohesive, but it's still a very, very enjoyable record. Goliath is a very neat song that gets called a 21st Century Schizoid Man ripoff, and I think that's very unjust. I'll just come back to that in a minute. Soothsayer is a very demonic, I guess, and noisy track, to say the least. I really like the use of violin on the track. At the end of the track, there's a very true metal kilt scream that really reflects the torment the band was going through at the time. My personal favorite record on the track, though, is Cavalates. The longest on the track, and it really progressive, and it's really heavy, actually, for Volta standards. Now, unfortunately, this sandwiches another song with Goliath called Tourniquet Man. I think the song's pretty shit. It's the epitome of useless, and when people say Volta's just noise, this is the track I think of, really. It's just a shit song. The only plus side of this song is it's the shortest on the record, so I guess there's that. Overall, flawed but very, very enjoyable record. Now, this is where shit started to fall apart for the band. Ike does not play in this record at all. Adrian and Paul were booted from the band, and this would be Pridgen and Frusciante's last stint with the group. This record is really relaxed for Volta standards. Even the band themselves called it their acoustic album. That's like Jeffrey Dahmer beating someone to near death and saying, "He may not be able to walk again, but at least I didn't kill him and devour him." Of course, it is a Volta record, so there's going to be some of that bombastic energy, more prevalent on the second half of the record. The calmer bits of the track could be a pretty nice listen as well. I really like Halo of Noon Battles. It's a very memorable track for me. Also, for people shitting on Goliath for being a 21st Century Schizoid Man ripoff, have you heard the middle section of Copo Taxi? Have you honestly heard the fucking middle section of Copo Taxi? Shut the fuck up. Leave Goliath alone. Now. Teflon is a pretty cool and edgy track. Sometimes the acoustic tracks just feel like they go nowhere sometimes, though. Yeah, I'm looking at you with Twilight as my guide. While touring for this record, tensions rose between Pridgen and the fears of this band. Some say it was Pridgen being immature. Some say it was a similar incident to John Theodore, or it could be a clusterfuck of both. Regardless, Pridgen ended up leaving the band, and the band toured with Dave Elch for the rest of the tour. After the tour, Volta was put off just a bit to focus on other projects. This fucking record. To be fair, this isn't the worst record. It's not these pieces of shit, but it's...
You know ready?
I hope I throw up.
But you have to watch it from beginning to end, okay? And don't look away. You have to...
Oh, shit. Oh,
you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it.
I'm not watching it.
No, Thomas, watch it. You can't do it. No, Thomas, watch it. Look.
It's much better though.
Yeah, it gets better and better. Oh man, that's just the beginning.
For an adventurous band. A bunch of pussies.
But, like, what the flippity fuck? Like, I'm all for change in a band. I love Miles Davis. I love David Bowie. I love Queen. I don't mind when an artist moves in a new direction to create new and interesting records. But I like when it's done right. In this case, I also enjoy the past couple of releases from this band, as previously stated, unless you just skipped ahead if you did a good job high. That shifted sound. That didn't sound like total shit. Ironically, this record took the longest to make, between 2009 and 2011. Why? The band at this point dwindled down to a 4-piece with Omar on guitars and keyboard. That's why. Cedric still on vocals. They held Juan captive to slap at the bass, and if Juan wink once if you're being held captive, I'm worried about you. They also brought Tony Parks on the record to play, and I'll give credit where credit's due. Really solid performance here. Now, the name of this album comes from a blend of the words Nocturnal and Tourniquet, which is one of their worst fucking songs. The record itself is just a subpar mixed bag. I mean, at least they ended it on a high note with Zed and 2 Knots. But for whatever fucking reason, they decided to make the Macon Jewel the lead single off this record. That is actually the worst Mars fucking Volta songs ever. Like, I mean, this song is so fucking bad, like, I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of the reasons people thought the world was gonna end in 2012. Like, what the fuck is this? When all the traps in the cellar go clickety-clack, I know I set them for you. Fucking... that line actually hurt me. Also, I am a landmine. I am a landmine. So don't you step on me. So don't you step on this. The line is pure fucking cringe. It's just. It's on the song The Whip Hand, by the way, so you know what to avoid. There's also tracks I do enjoy on this record, though. Like, I really like In Absentia, a very good track, and Imago is also enjoyable. Before I hack at this record anymore, let's just leave it, fucking bury it, put it out of its misery, and move on. After the Noctourniquet tour, Omar stated that the band was on a hiatus. A couple months later, Cedric just said the band was finished. This was ripping off the Band-Aid opposed to letting it peel back all of your skin. See what I did there? I'm sorry. Now, don't cry because it's over. Cry because it happened. This band branched out to many other projects. I'll name a few. Anti-Mask, which, not too. I'm not really into it, honestly. It's with Cedric and Omar and has Blink-182 drummer Travis Barker on it, and it's not my cup of tea, I guess. There's also Zavalav that didn't release anything yet. But from what I heard with the live performances, it's pretty enjoyable. Bosnian Rainbows is a project with Omar and Tony Parks, and it's a pretty enjoyable project I enjoy. And Omar has a shit ton of solo releases, so that tickles your fancy, go check them out. Now, before I leave you, I have to say another thing. Ike tragically died in 2014 of a heart attack while touring with Jack White. Your work won't be forgotten for years to come. Now, without sounding like a moral fuckboy, the Mars Volta actually taught me to give shit second chances. I didn't like De-Loused at first, and I gave it another chance. One of my favorite bands a few months later. Also, with the case of Cedric and Omar, they taught me good friendships lasted a lifetime. I mean, they pranked us with Inter Alia, didn't they? Remember, you take the veil, you take the dive, and I'll hopefully see you next time.
I bet you a second chance with dried white rose to Bethlehem.
Subscribe to the Downfall Network.